It all started when I went hiking alone in the rugged mountains of the Pacific Northwest. The scenery was breathtaking, but as I trekked deeper into the wilderness, a feeling of unease settled upon me. As I rounded a bend, I saw a small campsite with a solitary figure sitting by the fire. His name was Jake, a middle-aged man with unkempt hair and an intense gaze. Despite my instincts telling me to steer clear, I decided to be friendly and strike up a conversation. Jake was friendly enough, but there was something about him that seemed off. He spoke in cryptic phrases and had an uncanny way of predicting things about me that I hadn't shared yet. My nerves were on edge, but I didn't want to offend him, so I continued chatting. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I mentioned that I would be heading back to my own campsite. To my surprise, Jake insisted on accompanying me. I hesitated, but didn't want to seem rude, so I agreed. The trek back was eerie. Jake walked with an unnerving silence, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me. My heart pounded with each step, but I tried to keep calm. When we reached my camp, I thanked him for the company, hoping he would leave. But Jake lingered, claiming he didn't want to be alone. He kept staring at me, and I began to feel trapped. I made an excuse about needing to rest early for another hike the next day and suggested he head back to his camp. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jake reluctantly left. I stayed awake the whole night, fearing he might return. The next day, I hurriedly packed my belongings and left that part of the mountains far behind. To this day, I wonder who Jake really was and what his intentions were. Days later, I was watching the news when I saw a picture of Jake on the screen. He had been reported missing in the mountains. My blood ran cold as I realized that the friendly stranger I had met might not have been human at all. Was he a ghost? A lost soul still wandering those treacherous trails, forever seeking company? I decided to stay in a charming countryside inn known for its rustic charm and isolation. The inn was located in a secluded village in the English countryside, surrounded by lush green fields and rolling hills. The owner, whose name was Emily, welcomed me with warm hospitality. Everything seemed perfect at first. The inn was cozy and the surroundings were picturesque. But as the night wore on, I started noticing odd things happening. Whispers echoed in the halls and shadows danced on the walls even when no one was around. I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but things took a darker turn during dinner. As I sat alone in the dining room, Emily entered, but she seemed different, distant and cold. When I tried to strike up a conversation, she abruptly changed the subject or avoided eye contact. As the night went on, I began to feel increasingly uncomfortable. The atmosphere seemed suffocating, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I even heard faint footsteps outside my room when I knew no one was supposed to be there. Feeling spooked, I decided to cut my vacation short and check out early. As I bid farewell to Emily, she looked at me with an unsettling grin and whispered, "You'll be back." Her words sent shivers down my spine, and I couldn't leave fast enough. On my way back, I discovered some locals had odd stories about the inn and Emily. Some believed she had lived there for centuries, never aging. Others claimed the inn was cursed, and guests who left early would experience misfortune or tragedy. One night, as I lay in my new hotel room, I received a strange call. The voice on the other end was distorted, and the words were barely audible, but I could swear I heard Emily's name being whispered. My heart raced as I remembered her eerie grin. Was she somehow reaching out from beyond the grave? This creepy encounter happened during a city vacation. One night, I decided to take a taxi back to my hotel after a late dinner. The driver's name was Mr. Smith, an elderly man with a cold demeanor. At first, everything seemed fine, but as the ride progressed, Mr. Smith's conversation took an unsettling turn. We were in a bustling city, far away from the tranquility of nature. He started asking personal questions about my family, my job, and even my travel itinerary. I became uneasy and tried to steer the conversation away from such topics. However, Mr. Smith persisted, sharing stories about how he had taken other tourists to isolated areas, claiming they never returned. My heart pounded as he chuckled, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was enjoying my fear. The atmosphere grew more tense as we neared my hotel. To my horror, Mr. Smith drove past the entrance and continued down a desolate road. I demanded he stop, but he ignored me, muttering cryptic phrases under his breath. My fear escalated, and I knew I had to act fast. I pretended to receive a call from a friend, telling them about my exact location and describing the taxi. I saw Mr. Smith glance at me through the rearview mirror, and his expression changed to something sinister. Finally, he pulled over and demanded I pay him. I handed over some money, grateful to get out of that cab. As I walked away, I kept my eyes on him, making sure he didn't follow. I reported the incident to the local authorities, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Mr. Smith was still out there, lurking in the shadows. Days later, I received a package at my home address. Inside was a worn-out journal, filled with disturbing entries and drawings. The name on the journal cover was Mr. Smith. It seemed to be his personal account of encounters with various tourists, recounting the fear he instilled in them during late-night taxi rides. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Was I just another victim in Mr. Smith's twisted game of terror? I couldn't help but wonder how many others had experienced the same unnerving taxi ride and if they had managed to escape his clutches.